Ask the Podcast Coach for August 30th, 2014.
Let's get ready to podcast.
Oh, it's Saturday morning. It is Ask the Podcast Coach, and I am your smiling host, Dave Jackson from the schoolofpodcasting.com. And this is where we take your questions live. And joining me, as always, from theaverageguy.tv is the one and only Jim Collison. Jim, how's it going?
Greetings, Dave. Happy Saturday morning to you.
I have a strange question for you.
Yeah.
I haven't had a big train wreck in a while. Do you hear the music in just one channel?
Nope. Both sides for me.
Okay.
Yeah.
No. We were talking about this before we hit record, that I need to dump this mixer. Because for me, it's just in one channel. Oh, you know what I bet it is? Is it my headphones? No, because I hear both of me. Who cares?
But you're just hearing the music. You're just hearing it in one
the music
channel.
in here. I'm just rocking out on the right side of my head.
Yeah. No, it's all good on this side, and I think I hear what the audience hears, so I think they're okay.
Yeah, you can find us at askthepodcastcoach.com/live, and it just dawned on me that Dave will be talking here as he didn't put the embed code in the live site. It's been one of them there mornings where you get a little behind. It's one of the things somebody asked me about, is it cool to do a live show? It is if you have a team of people, but sometimes when it's just you, yourself, and I, it gets a little, what's the word? Overwhelming.
Mm-hmm.
And in the case of me today, my wife said, "Can you please not get up quite so early on Saturday? Because not that I wake her up, it's just that by about 10 o'clock, I'm a zombie. And it's Saturday, and she's ready to party, and I'm like, oh, I'm..." She's like, So, yeah, the alarm went off, and I hit snooze and grabbed another half hour, and that was the case of that. But if you would like to call in, that number is, of course, 845-262-2401. That number again, 845-262-2401. And if you're at AskThePodcastCoach.com/live, and you're like going, "Hey, Dave, it's showing last week's episode. If you now press refresh, that should be us." So, anyway, so what's going on, Jim? Anything new and exciting?
Oh, another Saturday is here. I'm actually a week ahead on my podcasts, which is something I don't ever do. I'm kind of a just-in-time podcast guy. I record on Thursday. I release on Saturday. I've done that for 4 years. I did two podcasts a couple weeks ago. I did two podcasts in one day, and I exercised some discipline and didn't release them both. And right, and so we're kind of in that situation here too. But so I've got one in the can, which is kind of nice, and I recommend that actually. And I don't practice it, but it's just kind of the way I am. It does change a little bit of your workflow when you've got stuff in the can. It doesn't. It lowers the sense of urgency. This is what I'm finding, and I'm a guy who needs a sense of urgency. So, I'm missing things. Because I'm not doing it in order. Typically I'd sit down on one day and crank. It's about a 3-hour process for me for mixing, editing, producing, making all the video sizes. I make a video large and a video small, post it to YouTube, put all the meta over there, make a post, get that posted, send it to Audio Boost, send it to Spreaker, send it to all that stuff that we do. And now I'm kind of doing it out of order, and I'm finding I'm missing things. So it's kind of goes back to that importance of kind of having that checklist. Yeah.
That's me. I used to when I played in a band, I had the whole thing. I had a certain way I would pack the car, and if one thing changed, all of a sudden you'd get to the gig, and you're like, oh man, I forgot to put my guitar strings in the thing, and whatever the routine was. It was blown.
I find it really important when say you have a really defined process and you get really good at it, you stop thinking about it, you just execute. Then you take a break for a couple weeks and you try to come back to that process that you just executed on, and it's just amazing how you think, oh, I got this, because 3 weeks ago I was doing it flawlessly. Well, it's a diminishing skill. You start forgetting things. Oh yeah, I was supposed to, whatever, and so you've got to. Sometimes those checklists are really handy to come back to. Just scroll. I mean, pilots use them, right? And they're doing important stuff. And every pilot before he takes off gets his logbook out and his checklist and goes through it, because you don't want to be in the air and miss something.
Yeah, it's one of those things that it's like you said, if you don't use it, you lose it. and all of a sudden you come back and it's the little itty bitty things. You go, oh yeah, I forgot to tag my file or whatever it was. And I see Sergeant Fred is in the chat room. Last night they had a podcasters roundtable, and they talked about podcast movement. I believe was the original thing. And Friday night is a dedicated family night, so I was unable to attend. Yeah, it was actually fun. Had my one stepdaughter came over, and my stepson, and we just sat around and did some family stuff. So that was a lot of fun. But I did have something that I thought we might talk about in the event again. If you want to call in, it's 845-262-2401. What would you say, or have you ever had somebody that, like, what do you think the number one or number two or the top reasons people don't start a podcast?
What do I think they are? Why?
Yeah.
Fear. I'd say fear is number one.
That's it. That's the one that I'm really finding out. Some people get lost in the tech, and then I'll help them get through the tech, and I'm like, okay, what's the deal now? And they're like, I don't know. I have the jitters, and I'm really like, really? It's like interesting. So
I think fear of failure or of saying something. I mean, this is recorded permanently forever in some,
right.
And people are like, I don't know if I want to have that out there forever. And so it's just why are people afraid to call in? Obviously, we don't have that fear this morning. We've got a caller.
Yeah, we do. But we'll continue that discussion as we go along. But ending in 0393, you are on with Dave and Jim. What's your name and what's your question?
Hey, Dave. It's Miss Eileen.
It is. How are you? Awesome. How are you?
Hey, Jim.
Good morning.
I'm well. Well, I watched the roundtable last night, and of course, we all missed you, Dave.
Thank you.
So, my question is for you. When it comes to the two conferences, okay, you're going to have Podcast Movement. We know it's going to be at the end of July. And we also know that New Media Expo is going to be held in combination with NAB. Mm-hmm. If you could only pick one, which one and why? I know I put you on the spot.
That's a really, really toughie because
I know.
In the end, well, here's a weird one. In the end, it almost doesn't matter which one because the stuff that I pull away from usually isn't in the session. It's in the hallway. When I went to the House of Blues on Saturday, it was getting really loud in there, and I'm like, look, I got to talk tomorrow. And I went out into the lobby of the House of Blues, and there stood one Michael Stelzner from Social Media Examiner, and I had a good one-on-one with him for about 20 minutes, and he explained the behind-the-scenes of Social Media Examiner that you just are not going to get someplace else, and he told about how many people he had on the staff and what he was spending on hosting, and blah, blah, and I was like, oh, this is awesome. So that wasn't in a session. Now, did I get some cool stuff from sessions? Absolutely. I would have to look at, and this is where I can't make an educated guess. I'm not sure how much New Media Expo is at this point. That was the one nice thing about Podcast Movement. I know I definitely want to go to this next one just because I've never been to one with the NAB, and I'm not sure, like, you know what I mean? It's like I've been to every inception of New Media Expo going back to the days in California, so I almost need to go to that one. If I had to pick one,
It's a toughie, and I don't think anyone else who was on the round table was totally sold on just picking one, but I figured I would just pick your brain and see what your thoughts were this morning.
If I had to pick one, I would see, because I had such a phenomenal time. The booths were better at Podcast Movement. It was a little cheaper at Podcast Movement, but I want to go to New Media Expo just so I can see the NAB thing. And that's just if
the
they,
NAB,
if they didn't do the NAB thing, Podcast Movement. Not hands down.
I think,
but it's like a little. It was just that much better, and partly due to the keynote speakers at the New Media Expo the last couple years have been really good, or really, 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 really bad. And I'm sorry, when I'm putting out that kind of money, I can expect, okay, that guy didn't connect with me, but when it's just, when you're whipping DVDs at my head, I'm not paying money to have somebody with DVDs in my head. I mean, I went to a session at Podcast Movement that did not connect with me, I shall say. That I just thought,
Okay.
nah, okay. But on the other hand, I'll give them kudos. They were trying to be creative and do something outside the norm of just stand up and talk to people. But I was just like, nah, not for me. But yeah, yeah. If it wasn't for NAB, and I had to pick one, I'd probably go back to Podcast Movement because they were going to do things next year that I can't talk about yet that are going to be really, really cool. Especially for me.
Well,
Okay, go ahead. Thank you. You just saved me from.
Does it come? Is part of your decision have anything to do with the fact that the podcast awards are going to be given out
that's another
NMX?
one.
See, you weren't thinking about that, were you?
No, I wasn't. I could go there and not get an award again. That'd be fun. That's my favorite. I was thinking about that this last week. I thought, do I want to go through the hassle? It's not a hassle because it's always an honor to be nominated. But I'm like, do I really want to put my audience through? Please vote for me. Please vote for me. And I just thought about that. I'm like, I don't know where I stand with it.
Because you have so many shows now, you probably have to have about 15 calls to action.
Yeah.
At the end of every podcast.
So that is true. And from what I heard, if you listen to the new media show, they interviewed. Have you heard that with Rick, where he's talking about all the stuff?
Yes. Oh yeah.
And I'm still.
Yep.
I'm still a little confused on exactly what the setup is, because it sounds like the floor is going to be shared. Like I can see all the booths from NAB and NMX, and then the sessions obviously are going to be separate. Like I can't go to NAB sessions with my NMX ticket. So it sounds like there's NMX.
Well, from what I heard
okay, go ahead.
What I heard, Dave, was that you will be able to go to NAB. They will have NAB only and NMX/NAB. Now that's what I heard Rick say on Todd Cochran's show last Saturday. But you know things can change.
Yeah.
But I do remember him saying that. So, and all of the NMX stuff will be in one area. And just for the record, I probably won't go to either one, but I'll be there in spirit.
Oh. Let's see here. We're getting some chat things here. It says the sessions. Okay, so the sessions are going to be separate, but the booths will be in the big room with the other people apparently. But interesting. Yeah, it's going to be a tough one. Jim, if you had to pick one, being that you've never gone to either.
Yeah, I've not been to either. No, I haven't done either. They always conflicted with CES, and I've only done podcasting for podcasters with you for the last 9 months or so. But I think I would probably do Podcast Movement at this point. I think it's a little truer to its roots. It's really designed for podcasters, where the other one is like, oh, and let's include the podcasters, which is okay. I mean, I'm not trying to be bitter or angry about that. So I think Podcast Movement, from just what I've heard about what the content was and the buzz coming out of it, and the sessions, and it was helpful to listen to Podcasters Roundtable last night. I didn't catch it live, but I caught it after the fact, and to kind of hear different. I've heard your opinion of it and some others, and so I think Podcast Movement is where if I had to pick one, that's probably where I'd go. And I hate Vegas, so.
Yeah, I'm with you. There's a great thing in the chat. Fred just said you can buy a booths only, exhibits only pass for free. That would be my ticket, because in many cases you can get some of the sessions. I mean, I played my session in my show last week, so you can get some of the sessions, and you can do your networking for free. So I guess there goes my chance of being a speaker next week. But I mean, that would be an option if you're on a really tight budget. Now, on the other hand, I did learn some really good stuff in the sessions. I always do. They always have good speakers there. But that's interesting. So, Miss Eileen, if you said you're not going to either, but if you hit the lottery and you can go to one, based on what you've heard.
I would go to podcast. I would go to Podcast Movement just because the sheer size of the whole NAB. I have a bad knee, and there's no way I'm trying to walk past all this stuff that I know I'm ever going to consider buying. because it's there, you know. So I would go to the movement because I feel like it would be a better opportunity for me to really, you know, get to meet some of the people. You know, it seems like you're going to get lost in the mix of everything with NAB. But, you know, it would be worth, if I could do both, I would, but with my bad knee, I think I better just chill until I get this knee replaced.
Yeah.
And then, so maybe 2016.
Get yourself a little scooter. Go to town.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
Okay, well, thanks.
Well, yeah. The other thing that I know NAB has a lot of equipment, but most of it's not even remotely close to being affordable for the average podcaster. So I'm not sure how seeing their booth is going to be a huge bonus. But it'll be interesting to see. I definitely want to go to both. I'm actually going to I might talk about that on the School of Podcasting, because there's some tools you can use to have it put money away. You know, there's some things in your banks and things like that if you figure out I need some money and I need it at this date, you can kind of reverse engineer and go, that means I need to take out X amount of money a month. And I had forgotten I'd done that. And I logged into my bank account. I'm like, wow, I have money in the bank. This is unheard of for me. And it's because I'd been putting $20 away for a lot of months, apparently. And here I was eating ramen noodles and mac and cheese to go to a podcast movement and money in the bank. So that's all right. That's why I'm going to go get a mixer. So,
oh, that's good.
So,
okay.
Where can everybody find you? What's your website?
Oh, you can find me at basicblogtips.com, and everywhere else I'm pretty much Eileen. That's ILEANE. One more time, ILEANE.
There you go. Awesome. Well, thanks for calling in.
Thanks so much.
Thanks for calling in.
You guys have a wonderful day.
You too.
All right. Bye now.
All
Miss
right.
Eileen rocks. She does. She's everywhere.
Yeah.
Forget Pat Flynn. Miss Eileen is everywhere. If there's like a new social, like if they came out tomorrow with like something like, you know, I don't know, social whatever, or whatever, insert weird word here, you'd go there to sign up and there'd be Miss Eileen already had an account. She's been here for a month. You're like, what?
I don't know. It's tough. Pat Flynn is such a nice guy. I mean, he is just you. Sometimes you want to be like, you know, he's successful, and you know what we do in America to successful people, and you know you're like, but every time you interview him, when you get done, I'm like, man, he's a nice guy. You know,
he is.
He's just a super nice guy, so it's hard not to like him.
Yeah. Mike asked about my mixer. I bought a Mackie 1202 VLZ. I believe it was the 3. Now they have the 4. I got it off of eBay, and I don't have anything bad. I generally suggest to people to look at eBay. This thing is just, it's got I have some weird noises coming out. I swapped out my USB today, thinking that maybe it was the connector. I don't know what's going on, but I know I didn't have this. I've had somewhat of a noise from the minute I bought this thing, and so I'm going to try rearranging my desk to see if it's picking up some sort of noise from other items, and if that doesn't work, then I'm going to just replace it. Because unfortunately, I need 2 auxiliary sends. So if you have a suggestion for a 2 auxiliary send mixer, I would love to hear it, because you demand when it comes to stuff. That's weird. And of course, I'm talking to Mike, and he can't hear me.
Yeah, he said he lost his audio. It'll come back. I just checked both feeds, and it still seems to be working for everybody. So,
well, we got another caller coming in at ending in 1679. You're on with Dave and Jim. What's your name and what's your question?
Well, my name is Michael, and I so enjoy this. This is the second time I've called you. I called you several weeks ago.
Awesome.
Loving what I'm seeing. And how was the podcast thing in Dallas? Was it excellent?
Oh, it was excellent. There was really when I do the podcast review show, it's always kind of interesting when you get like a really good show, because you have to really, really look hard to find some sort of like, well, you could improve this, and there really wasn't a whole lot. I mean, you just walked in, class act from start to finish. There was like one little thing. They did a thing where they had outside of the rooms where all the vendors were, so you didn't have to walk a mile to get there. They had a little stage, and on occasion they would try to do things on break. And unfortunately, it didn't matter
Did
how.
John Lee Dumas get up there and dance?
He did not, but he was doing something during lunch. Somebody, I think the Solopreneur, was interviewing him during that. But I know Daniel J. Lewis tried to do some comedy along with Clifton, and they just got flat out ignored. And I just was like, I was so bummed because Daniel's thing was really, really funny, and nobody was listening. And
I'm a big fan of Daniel.
yeah, he's a good guy. Well, the thing was, he was my roommate. We always, anytime we go to a convention, we always room together and split the cost. And so I was privileged. He said, hey, I'm kind of nervous about my thing. I think this is going to work. Do you want to hear my routine? And I'm in my head, I'm thinking, Daniel isn't really that funny on the Audacity of the podcast. He's very much a just the facts kind of guy. And I'm like, wow, if this isn't funny, this is going to be embarrassing because I'm going to have to work on my fake laugh. And it was hilarious. I mean, I was howling. And the thing that really sucked about it is he gets in front of this, and I mean, it's a tough crowd. Just picture talking to a room of about 200 people, and you have maybe 6 standing directly in front of you so they can hear you, and the rest are just ignoring you. And I just felt so bad, and it didn't rattle him, but you could tell he was just like, and let me pull my chain and say the next line that everybody else is going to ignore. And to his credit, he started making jokes about the fact that nobody was listening, but it threw off his timing a little bit, and it was just kind of like, let me get through this kind of thing, and that took away from the humor of it. So I told him, I said, you need to record that and like put that at the end of the Audacity of the podcast because it was fun. But yeah,
I would enjoy that. All right, on to my technical question, if I may.
Okay.
Okay, I do a nationally syndicated radio show that I have recently started podcasting because I can tell you, doing nationally syndicated radio for 26 years, radio is on its way down, and I think podcasting is on its way up. That being said, so what I do now is I take my weekly show, which, by the way, is homeandgardenradio.com if you want to check it out. And after I, produce the show, which goes out over the Biz Talk Radio Network, I podcast it. I just take the 4 segments out of it, slap it together, stick an intro on it saying that this is the podcast, and stick it on my website, stick it on iTunes and all that. I would like to do kind of what you're doing and be able to take the podcast, and my radio show airs, by the way, at 4 o'clock in the morning. I would like to do the podcast in the afternoon, since it's a gardening podcast, and be able to open it up for phones. And the way that you're doing it through YouTube seems fascinating. What equipment and how are you making this magic happen? And you make it happen so well, by the way.
Thank you very much. If you go to, and I'm gonna answer your question, but if you want to see the super duper details, go over to AskThePodcastCoach.com and become a patron, and you can see a video of the behind the scenes stuff. What I'm using to stream the audio is a company called Mixlr, and I'm also, now you don't need this one, but I'm also using Spreaker just because when I started this experiment in live, I was testing all these live platforms. So those are the 2 I like, and I'm like, hey, if I can reach more people, why not stream them in both places? For the call-in part, I'm using a website called callinstudio.com, and it is $6 for the phone line, and it's, I want to say like 6 cents, 3 cents, something per minute per caller. Now, for the record, if you compare that to Blog Talk Radio, and we all know how much I love Blog Talk Radio, which is $40 a month, I think I just got recharged $25 for the first time in about 6 weeks because, A, I don't have a ton of callers. I'm glad you guys have been calling in today. And even if I do, it's not as expensive as I pay for what I get. I'm not paying $40 for a whole bunch of nothing. And so originally I started using the system, and then we dumped it because we had some problems. Where it kept dropping callers, and I don't know what they did, but we haven't dropped a caller in a while. It's not.
It's been rock solid. Yeah, it's very solid.
So that's the magic for this, and then the fun part is, and this is where I say, and then obviously I'm using a Google Hangout on Air. So if I were to do this again, I don't know that I would do the Mixlr streaming thing because, in theory, they could just watch the YouTube thing. That might make it a little easier. Now, I'm reaching more of an audience because a lot of people want to listen. I know Steve Stewart listens the one day on Mixlr on his phone, he was
Yeah,
listening
I
live.
wouldn't change that, Dave. To be honest
No?
with you, I think no. I when we broadcast live, I think you need to provide a video and audio
In an
only,
audio? Yeah. I would
and so yeah, I wouldn't
probably
change it.
pick one or the other. I don't know if I would use two. That's a little overkill.
I don't think so. Especially because there are people who are getting into those ecosystems, right? There are people who are Spreaker is pushing their app, Mixler is pushing their app, and you can subscribe to those channels on either one of those apps. And if that's the place I want to go, it's just like our iHeartRadio listeners, right? If once they find us, and that's the hard part, but once they find us, then you can favorite and you'll keep coming back to it. So I'm a big proponent of trying to get everywhere, and multiple streams I don't think is a bad idea. It's more complex, right? So you have to remember, this is the hard part. When you go live, you got to remember to push the play button for both. But
The thing we've done the last, I don't know, month or so is if you listen to the early shows, the beginning of the show was always a train wreck because I was trying to hit record on a bunch of things all at the same time. And we just kind of waved the white flag and said, you know what? It's just me in this particular office. And so I start the Mixler feed about, I don't know, today I think it was about 3 minutes early. And I'm like, hey, welcome Mixler. We're going to start the show in about 3 minutes. And then I start Spreaker and I go, hey, you're listening to the pre-show of Ask the Podcast Coach. And then once I get everything ready and I got the phone in, I start YouTube. And that's when the show actually starts. And then just later, if I want to, I can go in and replace the file on Spreaker if I don't want them to hear the pre-show. But usually the pre-show I have people say they like the pre-show because they can hear kind of how we're planning and what we're doing and things like that. But that's all the players. Now, if you want to see all the knobs,
if I may be so bold.
Yeah.
Yeah, if I may be so bold, this is excellent. I'm going to go check out that website. I watch both of you on this show every week, and I watch some of your other things that you do, Dave. My question is for the two of you, and I'm an old broadcaster who is so new to this podcasting thing. Are both of you making a living doing this?
You go first, Jim.
No.
Yeah.
And I don't do it on purpose. Podcasting is a hobby. I mean, I work for Gallup here in Omaha, Nebraska, and that's my full-time job. And I actually podcast for Gallup now. So we've started I took my hobby to work, and we've started doing it as a kind of a social marketing tool. So well, sort of, but no, not in the traditional sense. My podcasts do not earn me enough. My income is probably a couple $100 a month via an Amazon affiliate link. I don't work it though like I need it, so I don't spend a lot of time talking about that. I don't really even take donations. I mentioned the Amazon link because we give that money back away as review units for folks. We can buy tech for them, they can review it, keep it, and then that stuff comes back to our site. So no, that's my answer.
And my other answer is also no. I hope I don't come across as I'm doing this for a living. I usually tell people I don't. My day job is I'm a teacher. I teach people technology, have been doing it for probably close to 25 years now. And a lot of people are like, oh, it's a bummer that you can't quit this and lose your day job. And I'm like, I really, most of the time I don't hate my day job. Now, if somebody wants to hire me at Libsyn or Blueberry or some kind of cool social media site, I might jump ship on that. But what I do is I work Mondays, Thursdays, and Saturdays, and maybe a little bit on Sunday, and maybe occasionally on a Tuesday, and maybe occasionally on a Wednesday. But usually it's 3 or 4 days a week. And I used to publish my income reports. If you go to School of Podcasting and I think go to the About, you can see my old ones. I actually quit doing that, not because they were going down. Occasionally, and this is a personal thing with me, occasionally when I read other people's income reports, it bums me out because theirs is a lot more than me. And I just thought the last thing I would want to do, I think I still am going to put them out via email, but I don't know that I'm going to make them so public. Because the last thing I want to do is have somebody go, oh man, that guy's making so much more than I am, and trust me, I'm making maybe 4 figures a month from podcasting, and I don't want to bum people out. So, and I've also heard there's 2 schools of thought on that. Some people are like, wow, I can't believe you're so transparent, which was what I was doing. I was doing it to promote my book, More Podcast Money. But on the other hand, other people think it's, I can't find a better way to say this. It's kind of a douchey move. Some people think. And so I went, you know what? If somebody really wants to know, I'll ask them. But it's not a big secret. I'm not afraid to say it. But anyway, so that's the chat room. Yeah, just make up your own income reports. But yeah, so I don't. My plan. The last time I checked my spreadsheet, and the other reason I don't is when I originally, in 2005, when I got into podcasting, I did that, and along the way, podcasting paid for me to go back and get my teaching degree. I've been teaching forever, but my original degree was in electronic engineering, and when I was in between jobs, as they say, I went to get another teaching job, and they go, "What's weird? Your degree's not in education." I'm like, "Yes, but I've been doing this for 15 years," and they went, "Yeah, we really need a bachelor's degree in education." So podcasting paid my way through school, and when I graduated, not only had I picked up a degree, but I'd also picked up a wife. And the wife voted the steady paycheck because about that time when I graduated is when Bush left and Obama came in. If you remember, the economy went, and so it was time.
Yeah.
So we voted steady paycheck, and so we did that. But the plan, the last time I checked my spreadsheet, is about 2 years. Is I'm going to swap, and I want to like teach a class or two at a college level, and then maybe do podcasting a little more. But right now, while I'm still like $26,000 in debt to student loans, we're opting for the steady paycheck.
I totally understand. Hey, I enjoy the show very much. I'm going to keep listening. You guys have a great day.
Hey, Mike,
Thanks, Michael.
What was your garden something home? What's your website again?
Home and spell out the word and, gardenradio.com.
Awesome. Thanks, Mike.
Very good. Thank you.
If you'd like to review it sometime, I would just love that.
There you go. Podcastreviewshow.com/review me. We'll have you on the show anytime.
All right. Thanks a lot, guys. Take care.
Thanks for calling in.
Don't promote the fact that you're not getting rich. Don't lie and you're making more than you are. There's no reason to promote that you aren't making as much as you would like.
Well, yeah, I think I think it's one of those things when we talk about income and that kind of stuff. Just be honest about it. I don't think you need to be woe is me and say, oh, I'm not making any money and it's not working. You don't go into a small business and buy something and they tell you the woes of owning a small business, right? They're just happy you're buying something when you come in. And so I think as podcasters, it's easy for me because I just do this for fun. I mean, I put an enormous amount of time in for having fun. So for me, it's still a gigantic time commitment. I spend a ton of time at this desk doing a lot of things with podcasting. But I do it out of a labor of love. It's a hobby. I love hanging out with you guys. I love helping people, and so that's one of those things that I do. It brings me enormous personal satisfaction. I almost said satisfaction as a new word.
I like that. Satisfaction.
But yeah, and we make a little money in the process of doing it. We give that back away to our community, but it kind of just depends on what you're doing. And I don't think we should ever say you can't make money doing this. I mean, you can make an enormous amount of money doing this if you want to and you work it right and you hustle. I think you can. I think it can be a thing. You need the breaks and you hit the right spots.
And it comes back to the original discussion we had. One of the things that stops me from pulling the trigger on that is our good friend fear.
Mm-hmm.
It's like, I could just try that and say, honey, we're going to live off your income for a little bit while I get this going. And, we could do that, and then I would have more time to do more consulting because I do get paid. When I'm sitting in the chair, I'm getting paid. And people are like, well, if you're getting paid for 3 days, why not make it 7? And I'm like, we'll see. But
because it's a big jump to go full time in that, and you're an entrepreneur at that point. You're self-employed. If things don't go well in a month, you're hurting, right? So yeah, it's a big jump. Yeah, it's just like sales.
Yeah, it's and that's the thing. People always say, well, what about John Lee Dumas and Cliff Ravenscraft and people? I'm like, you do realize their background is in what again? Oh, that's right, sales. What's Dave's background in? Teaching. So, hey, I wanted to reset something for Mike Phillips, who's in the chat room. He unfortunately had a minor technical issue. I was asking for your recommendation. My Mackie mixer I got from eBay, and to make a long story short, it just has weird. The contacts are dirty. It has this I hear a lot when I plug my headphones in, and so I was just wondering. I need 2 auxiliary sends. That's the big thing I need to do this show. And if you had any recommendations for, I was just going to go out and get like a Mackie VLZ 4 or whatever the latest version is. See, I've heard that ground loop, and the ground loop thing I have, again.
Although it's not making the sound now.
Is it?
No.
Who knows? See, that's where I think it's just. I think a lot of the connections on this thing are just.
Yeah.
To get it clean, but I wasn't sure. I know you've got some contact. Okay, there you go. And I'll contact Mike off the air, and we'll.
Your sound coach.
We'll have yeah, it is.
Your personal sound coach.
Sound coach. But yeah, if you want to call in, that number again is 845-262-2401. Again, it's 845-262-2401, and.
You know, Dave, Gary Leland had a good suggestion, and I hadn't thought of it. Although on the Mixlr page, unless we put it in chat, the phone number's not there. I'm wondering if there's a way to permanently embed the phone number on the Mixlr page, because people may show up here. This is where the chat is. So think through that. See if there's a way to add the phone number permanently to the page somehow.
Because we've got the artwork down in the bottom left-hand corner of the chat room. I could just put it on the artwork.
Yeah, something like that. I scrunch mine down to a half page so I don't get all the outside. It's responsive design, so the outside disappears. But it might be a good idea, and we'll drop that in there from time to time.
Mike Phillips says, "Don't call me a coach. It's a bad word." Well, there's a whole thing going on now. Todd Cochran, and we will talk about that after this call. But right now, like calling yourself a podcast consultant is kind of like saying I'm a used car salesman. There's a lot of bad apples apparently, and the fact that I want to get paid for my knowledge. Well, Dave, you are the devil, which is that's not uncommon. I was the first person that said, "How can we make money at this?" At the second or first podcast expo, and people are like, "What? You're an artist, man. You're not supposed to want money." But we do have a caller ending in 1409. You're on with Dave and Jim. What's your name and what's your question?
Hey, this is Gary. You can by now. Gary Leland.
Hey, how are you, Mr. Pickle?
Hey, how are you? Good. Enjoyed hearing the good remarks about the podcast movement from everybody.
Dude, it was awesome. It really, really, I can't imagine what you've given me some behind the scenes of what's coming on in part 2, but part 1 was like, how are you going to top this? Because I love the layout, the fact that I wasn't walking. I mean, I put on some serious miles there, but nothing like at other conventions. And the one that really blew me away, that I went, this shows how committed you guys are to having a good time, is when I went to the House of Blues, and I'm like, okay, House of Blues, cool. Kick back, talking by, and somebody walked by and handed me a hamburger slider, and then later walked by and I got some sort of shrimp thing, and I'm like, okay, who do I pay for this? Like, no, it's just part of the night. And I was like, wow, it's a free.
What? Sure, good.
That was good. It was awesome. And I was like, man, that is not something that I've seen at other places. So that's where I just went. That was the icing. I was already happy. I was ready to tell everybody this is the best thing ever. But just the fact that I didn't have to worry about, well, we need to go eat someplace. I just kept slamming shrimp and sliders, man. It was awesome.
Yeah, and a lot of events I've been to, they have something like that, but it's kind of like, I mean, we busted you there for the bus coaches. I mean, they weren't like some crappy buses.
Yeah.
And those cost us a ton of money. But I've been to a lot of events that do things like that, but they only do it for like the people who spend a lot of money kind of thing, where it's like $100 or something. Yeah. There's a small amount of people in there. I thought it was a great time. Yeah, there's so many things going on the next time. But I wanted to call you about your money-making deal.
My money-making deal?
Now, I love making money.
You do?
You know that. I love it, and I don't see anything wrong with it, and I don't think any of my viewers or listeners have a problem with it either. And I was just saying earlier, I think if you're not making money, I agree with you. If you're not making a lot, if the value of what you're making is not worth promoting, well, you're right. There's no need to promote it.
Right.
Don't lie about it and say, "Oh, I'm getting rich." But if someone asks you, be honest with them. But there's no need to go, "Hey, I'm the podcast coach and I'm not making a lot of money." I mean, that's not your goal to make a lot of money off of this. You like doing it. That's what you said. You would like to make money, but that's not your only goal. You like doing this. You like teaching because you're a teacher. So that shouldn't come up in your talk at all. I agree with you. Because then you got to explain. Yeah, well, I'm not making a lot of money because that's not my number one goal.
Yeah, and it's the thing for me that if anybody ever says, why do you charge for this? All I have to say is, well, I have somebody it's the old you can pay me now, or you kind of get what you pay for. I have somebody right now that they submitted their podcast to iTunes. They didn't get any help, and now when they go to submit it, it goes, this feed has already been submitted, and they submitted an invalid feed. And I said, you're going to have a lot of fun. You get to deal with Apple now, and, yeah, you didn't pay anything, but you're paying me now, and now you're paying me the big bucks. And because I know how to get around that because of my experience, and so I always tell people, I save you a headache, basically, and I save you time. And can you get this stuff for free? Sure, but that's if you have a lot of time. So
if they asked me, Dave, why should I pay you, I would give them 3 words. It has value. And so, when I used to get people all the time that asked me, hey, can you help me with my computer, right? And then when they found out I was podcasting, like, oh, can you help me podcasting? Can you do the recording for me? Would you do the editing? And eventually, if I say yes to all of that and I don't charge, I get more work than I can handle. So how do you slow that down? You put a speed bump, and you begin to charge for that. And now I do. I charge for that. I don't apologize for it. In fact, it slows down the sheer weight of work for me that would come that way. And so I think that's the value proposition really is. I mean, your time is valuable. You can't do it all. And if you did it all for free, there's no way you could do it. The stuff you do brings value. And I think that's the proposition we say to people is they say, well, why? And I say, because it's valuable. End of story. Either you want it or you don't. Let's move on with the conversation.
No, you're exactly right. But people, there's something, and I don't know what it is, and I can't explain this, but there's something. It's not just about the podcasting assistant. It's about online stuff altogether. A lot of people have a hard time putting a value on that. My wife won't buy an app for 99 cents.
Isn't that amazing?
Because it should be free is her thinking. She doesn't say that, but I've had people tell me. I've had people contact me for my app. Go, hey Gary, can you get me a free copy of that? I don't buy apps. I don't believe in it. There are people who now take that statement and increase it to the internet and as a whole. There are people who think that way because it's not a physical item. I'm into physical items, but because you have an item that's not a physical item, it doesn't really have a value. And that's mostly the people I think who would ask the question as to whether you should be charging or not.
Yeah.
Do you understand what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm. Oh yeah. Yeah. Well, and we wouldn't say that about the conference, right? There's no way you guys could do Podcast Movement for free, right? I mean, it just doesn't work. You've got.
I don't know if we made any money. I don't know if we made any money, and we had 600 people there. I mean, we'll know next week. But I mean, that was.
Yeah.
Well, it would be nice, but let me put it this way: if we made some money, we're not all going down to Hawaii on it.
Yeah. Well, those things.
So we will eventually. I guarantee you, but.
Those kinds of.
That's all I'm saying is. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to step on you.
No, go ahead, Gary.
No, I stepped on you. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Oh, I was just going to say those kinds of events they cost money to put on, but the podcasters who came to it willingly, no one in that scenario, no one begrudgingly paid that. Everyone knew the value that was going to be there, that it was going to be a great time for the weekend, that it had some entertainment value, it had some educational value, it had some networking value, and I think they weigh that value proposition and say, okay, I'm spending, Dave, in your case, maybe $1,500 to $2,000, and we say that question, is it worth it to go? And the quality of the product was worth the value. And so I think that's when we talk about this, that's the proposition we have to say. And people will willingly separate themselves from their money when they see that value. Your wife may not see apps as value to her, but there are people who do, and it's the trick is to find those. So go ahead, Gary.
Okay, and there's a ton of people you do, right? Luckily there are a ton. I just think that there are a lot of people who, for one reason or another, their mindset is it's hard for them to pay something that they can't physically put in their pocket, per se. That it's not real, that it shouldn't have that value. I think people who have that mindset is all I'm saying. Those people, maybe some of the people, when you go to an event like Podcast Movement, well, I would think it fit more into going to a Dallas Cowboys game. I think people are used to paying for events. I think a lot of people, I think more and more people are getting comfortable paying for information, basically, or apps or whatever you want to call it. Trawling training, but I think that a lot of the holdup is that. I think, Dave, you've been doing this forever, and you guys have a great show here. If there's anyone I wanted out there at that conference, it was you, Dave. You know so much about it. And I listened to your talk yesterday on your show, and I loved it. I wish I could have been there live for it.
That was fun. I was a maniac. I was running around, jumping around, almost broke your stage. So it was good. I had to keep people awake.
Yeah.
Hey, Gary, let me ask you this
Yeah, I
question.
wish I'd like to go. Oh,
No, before
okay,
you go, let me ask
but I'm
you.
here. I have no hurry.
Let me ask you one more question about the planning. So since you're behind the scenes on it, one thing you guys could do differently if you're going to change that, what would you do differently, or what are you going to do differently next time?
I think we had too many sessions at one time is the number one complaint we had. That people had multiple things they wanted to see. So I think you may find a few less at one time, but they may be just a little bit shorter. You know, because a lot of people ended up in a time allowance for question and answer. You know, instead of people carrying it over to that. We had a lot of people saying that they wished that a lot of the speakers had left time for Q&A.
Yeah.
Number one, and that because there were so many going on at one time, and they were all about the same subject. It's not like at New Media Expo where there's 10 going on. Well, gosh, some are about blogging, some are about podcasting, some are about books. I mean, ours was all about one subject. You know, so we want to have a lot of people there as far as speakers. So we're thinking about maybe shortening the time a little and decreasing the amount at one time so people can see more speakers. And, you know, Dave, if you got 45 minutes, you're going to get that information out in 45 minutes.
Yeah,
if you got 35 minutes, you're probably going to get just about the same information in 35 minutes.
Yeah. Actually making a shorter presentation, people think making a longer because I have to get all this information. Making a shorter presentation is actually harder because you have to figure out, okay, what am I really trying to say here? And now I have this much time. And if I had one thing that I would change about my session is that I kept wanting to give and give and give and give, and I should have left time because by the time I got done, I was like, wow, I don't have any time for questions. I didn't leave a whole lot of room. That's one thing I would have done differently about mine. But I answered a bunch of questions in the hallway, so I guess it worked out.
Hey, I have planned.
Yeah, I think we're going to leave in a lot of time for questions.
Yeah.
I've planned these kinds of conferences in the past for user groups, and we've done big user groups, a couple hundred people, and you do there's no job that's harder than scheduling these sessions because the users are like, no, I want longer sessions because we want to learn more, but then they'll say at the same breath, but we also want more of those, and then you're like, well, there's only so many hours in the day, and you're trying to reach an audience, and so if you pack maybe a breakout session has 4 actual sessions in it, and then but they want more information, so you pack 6 in it, and then they say, well, there's too many, and so it's this balance of trying to find to get that session. It's hard. There's no easy way around that. So I applaud you guys for at least trying to get that and tune it and tweak it. If you shorten them up so you can get more sessions, then people complain there wasn't enough time for Q&A. If you lengthen them, then you don't get enough of them, and people complain that there's not enough sessions available.
Right.
If you give them too many sessions, they complain they couldn't go to all of them. So it's no win.
Yeah,
right?
well, it's a learning process.
Yeah,
it's a learning process for us. I think we, for our first one, and none of us have ever done one before. So for the first thing we've ever done, I think we started out on the right track. And I've heard some complaints from some people here and there. Most of the complaints I heard is that we had too many people who were financed into making money. Which was a true point, which I agree. We had a lot of those. So next year we'll have more categories and try to balance that out a little better, and maybe we'll have some rooms designated for a certain type of speaker. If we have a lot of one kind, maybe some of the rooms will be dedicated to that kind of speaker. I think we're going to have another activity next year for. I feel like when I go to podcast conferences, my wife, or any tech conference, my wife never wants to come. She doesn't want to come to any conferences, softball, tech, whatever I do. She never wants to come no matter where it is. And we went to one for UFSSA, Social Director, National Media Director for them, and we had a special event for the, the upper echelons wives, where they got all the wives, took them in the bus and took them shopping, took them to the play. They spent the whole day out. My wife loved it. So I think we're going to do something like that, but it's going to be like not for the upper echelon. If someone wants to bring their spouse, whether it's a guy or girl, husband or wife, and they can come, and Friday night they could do the cocktail party, Saturday while we're at conferences, they can go on this event in Fort Worth that my wife will lead. Take them to Cowtown and see the historic part of Cowtown, take them to an area where they can shop in Cowtown, take them out to lunch to one of the better oldest Mexican food restaurants down there and do some things. It won't be very expensive. It will be a charge because we've got to rent a charter bus.
Right.
So it will be a charge, but we're going to try to make it so that it's more of a vacation type thing.
Dude, that is.
I know my wife like coming in, and I figure a lot of people's spouses might be like that. So we're going to try that and see if that is something people like.
That is pure genius, by the way. Because anyways, like, no, I don't want to spend money. Don't spend the vacation money on a podcast thing. I want to go on vacation. You're like, no, honey, you can come with me, and you get to go shopping. I think that's, you just got about 30% more of your audience to go to the podcast movement.
And with my wife running it, heading that up, it will be fantastic. She is the hardest worker I know I've ever met. Most of my success is due to her. I would probably still be the guy hanging out by the pool at 2 o'clock on Saturday afternoon if it wasn't for my wife on my rear my entire life pushing me. So she knows how to get things done, and she knows how things get. So we're going to try that out. That's something we're trying out. We got some other things we're going to try out to make this more of a total event. Because I think we're on the right track on the event itself. So we're gonna fine tune that. We're having, we're expecting between 1,000. We're projecting with as successful and as much people like that, we may have 1,000 to 1,200 this year. Wow. So now we're kind of going, wow, where can we do? Yeah, it's hard to find a place to hold, if half of those 600 people, 800 people, at like House of Blues was. It's hard to find that. And we're having a year in advance, and we've only got a couple of places that offer. I think the thing that held us up too last year, I've had a lot of people contact me that didn't come because when we first started doing this, they're going, these guys have never done this before. I got this other thing I've been invited to speak to, or this other thing I want to go to. Has nothing to do with podcasting, and I'm going to go to that. And they're going, gosh, I should have gone to yours. So I think all those people are going to come to ours. And then they'll be promoting it on their podcast. So that's why I say I think we'll reach 1,000 easy.
Yep.
I think we may get to a point where we have to decide whether we want to get thousands and thousands of people or if we want to cap it. And I'm thinking that there'll be a point where we're just going to cap it. That's my goal, to cap it, to make sure it's like, it doesn't get to be like, not that it ever would, but something like a South by Southwest miniature. Where there's thousands of people and it's out of control and everybody's going, that thing sucks. It used to be great. We're not into that. I'm thinking we should cap it, come up with a certain volume. And this is it. When it sells out, sorry, you can come next year, type thing.
Well,
that way we can keep the value high.
And you have some control over that. So, because there are times when if there's too many people, that can dilute it in certain situations. And that way you know what you have, and you can then create situations to maximize the effectiveness of that crowd.
I think capping it also creates a sense of urgency to get ticket spots.
Get your ticket now.
Get in there because it's like, I may not make it in. And so, Gary, I think that's a great idea. And I think it would help you guys budget and plan better if you knew exactly the number you were shooting for. And then that kind of eliminates a lot of the problems of transportation and housing and food because it's going to be this number. So, I like that idea. I think you guys should seriously consider that.
And I do want to, I can't say this enough, I want to let everyone know, Dan Franks is a machine. If you ever have to pick up a company, you've got 20 people to choose from, and he's in the lineup, you better pick that guy first. Yeah. He's a machine. Yeah. He's a smart, hard-working guy. I love that guy. Yeah, you meet very few people that are machines like that.
Yeah, I emailed him last week. I said
maybe that's not the right term to call a machine.
I'm
sorry, go ahead.
I emailed him last week. I said, when are the virtual tickets going to be available? And he's like, hey, the minute they're ready. He's already working on them. He goes, the minute they're ready, trust me, you'll be notified.
He has stuff done for next year that I didn't even know. I mean, he has stuff done for next year I didn't even know he'd done already. Wow. He's the kind of guy who can just do a ton of work, and when something else comes up, instead of going, hey, I've done my fair share, I'll dish this off, he just does it. I mean, so that's why I give him so many props. I met his parents, and I just had to say, hey, you guys did a great job on raising this kid. I mean, this kid, because that's what he is. He's like 27. Hell, my kid's 27. I mean, he's a kid, and he was taught how to work.
There you go. That is a skill that is not
well, I'm going to let you go because I feel like I hogged I feel like I hogged up too much of your airtime. I always try to get in and out of here.
No,
So I'm going to let you guys go.
All right, Gary. Well,
Great
thanks so
having you,
much,
Gary.
man.
Thanks for calling in.
Hey, thanks for taking my call, and I'll see y'all. Are y'all going to NMX?
I plan on it just because I want to see that induction of it. You know what I mean? That's one of the things I'm going to be talking about on Monday's School of Podcasting is how do I attend both? You know, because that's going to be a chunk of change, and it's
Okay.
like, but it's kind of, I always tell people I saw Van Halen with Gary Cherone. That was like that third version of Van Halen, just so I could say I saw it. So the fact that they're doing something new with NAB, I'll probably go. If it wasn't NAB, I'm not sure about that one. It depends. In some cases, there's all sorts of things that depend on that. If I was a speaker, probably. If I wasn't, not sure. So, but we'll see. They got something new going on.
Okay, well, I'll go if y'all are there. I'll see you there if you're there. If not, hopefully I'll see you next August here in Dallas.
All right. Oh, I'll definitely, dude. That sign me up. I'm there.
Oh, and a lot of people asking, and maybe some of your listeners might even be asking, but I start editing the videos next week.
Cool.
So, so I'll be sending those. Guess who I'm sending those to when I get through? Dan Franks.
There you go.
It's a machine.
Awesome.
I'll talk to you guys later.
All right, man.
See
Have a
you,
good
Gary.
one.
Bye.
Yeah. The other really cool thing that I got to do at Podcast Movement, I got to give Addie a hug.
Yeah, nice.
That was worth the trip right there. Such a sweetie. Awesome. And I think she might have been one of the people that said, it's funny because based on where my camera is, one of the things that, wow, you're taller than you look. And I'm like, well, I guess I should start, putting the camera here or something. By the way, today's shirt is courtesy of Steve Stewart. So thank you, Steve, for the shirt.
Oh, you got Steve Stewart in. Nice work.
Yeah, there you go. Had to get that in there real quick.
That's good to hear from Gary on that. To get some inside baseball on the show. And
I'm glad he spilled that because I knew that thing about the wife thing. I'm like, I don't know if I can talk about that.
Oh, okay. Yeah, no, I think that's a great. Listen, running these conferences is just. I think I've said this before. It's so thankless. And people pay big money to come, and they gripe about stuff, and it's too many sessions and not enough sessions, and too many marketers and not enough marketers, and I didn't learn anything, and the booze didn't have the right stuff, and the food wasn't great, and transportation, you can just not please everybody, and so I applaud them for making a run at this. I mean, these things are hard to do. I've run probably 15 conferences like this, a little bit smaller, more like 100 to 150 in size, but it is tough. It's a lot of work, and you get done, and it's a great sense of accomplishment. But it's a lot of work. So great, good job to that team that put that together.
Yeah, exactly. Mike Phillips in the chat room said it. You'll never make everybody happy.
No, and you can't go in trying to. It's like podcasting. If we bring this back to being a podcaster, as your show grows, you will get more and more complaints, and if you try to address them all, you'll end up having this really weird schizophrenic show that. You're trying to, okay, I have a quick intro, but then I'm trying to say things about myself, and I'm trying not to promote the show, but I need to promote the show. And, you'll have this, it'll just be odd. Just be you. Just have your show, right? Just have your thing. Do your stuff. Don't be somebody else. Be you. Make it your way. One of the things, I have a second producer now at work helping me. I do the podcast. We're growing, and so I need some help doing it. And one of some of the feedback we got from the leadership was, he was trying to be like me, and he was like, "No, you be you when you're producing or when you're on the show. Don't do it like Jim does it. Jim's got a unique thing that works for him. You do it like you." And so it's just one of those things. Make your show and let people come. Attract the audience that's going to naturally like it for you. Don't try and be somebody you're not.
Yeah, that was one of the big things that was resonated at Podcast Movement was be yourself. I forget it said there's an epidemic of, I forget what they call it, but where people are copying each other.
Well, hey, that's what we do. Some of this, right? Every time we talk about a tool or we show somebody being successful and we talk about it, we try to pull those points out to say, hey, this is how they were successful. We teach imitation. That's kind of teaching, right? But that being said, you have to take the things that you learn and then apply them to yourself and take what works. And we're not the first podcast for podcaster call-in show. Well, maybe we are.
I think we are. Yeah, we're the original on that one. If there was, it was on Blog Talk Radio. Nobody was listening to it.
Yeah, no, and Dave, I'll be honest, as we wrap this thing up, I have a lot of fun on Saturday mornings on this show. I mean, it's just, for me, it's so much fun. I'm kind of the outsider coming in. I was a lurker on the outside of this community for a long time, and I have gotten to know you. It has just been a blast getting to know everybody in the community. So, one, I appreciate you guys accepting me as a member of this kind of podcast community and filling in. And two, I just really enjoy my Saturday mornings.
Yeah, it is. It's a lot of fun. And you never know who's going to call in, and some people come and go, and some people keep coming back, and it's always good to look out in the chat. And that's one thing I do like about the Mixler chat, the fact that most people have a profile pic, but it's fun to see the same names out there, and that's always encouraging. And the fact that you can call on people and they call in and that whole 9 yards. So yeah, it's definitely one of those things where it used to be. I was talking to Jim this morning. I get up early on Saturday morning to get a bunch of stuff done, so I can then about 9:30 start working on this, and then after this I do other things. But most people are like, you get up early on Saturday, that's your day off, and I'm like, yeah, it's worth it. Who needs sleep? Sleep when I'm dead.
You can sleep when you're dead. Our internship program's coming up in a month, and so I'll be podcasting live from work coming forward, and so that'll be fun. Saturday mornings again with the kids, then jump out and do the podcast. So looking forward to a fall of podcasting with you.
Yeah, hey, speaking of money and plugging yourself, we should mention that this podcast is brought to you by the schoolofpodcasting.com. You can use the coupon code ASK20 and save $20 off your first month, and that has step-by-step tutorials, etc., etc. For more information, visit me over at schoolofpodcasting.com. And, of course, you can visit Jim over at
theaverageguy.tv.
And we are here every Saturday morning, 10:30 Eastern Standard Time, askthepodcastcoach.com/live. You can also find us on iHeartRadio if you're there. I need to figure out, I guess I'm in iHeartRadio, I am the podcast coach. Like somehow Ask didn't get in there, so I have to figure out how to update my name.
The easiest way is just askthepodcastcoach.com/live. Just bookmark that.
Yeah.
And that's got all the links right there.
Yeah, pretty much everything there. And we will see you next week. If you have any questions, feel free to call in the number, even if this isn't live, and that'll go right to voicemail. We could always play it that way. So if you're in some part of the world that you don't feel like getting up at 4 in the morning to listen to us live, we would love to hear your question that way as well. But thanks so much for tuning in, and we'll see you again real soon with another episode of Ask the Podcast Coach. And that's the show.
Mike Phillips makes a good point. He mentioned this last week, but whenisiton.net is a kind of an online calendar of shows. I submitted mine. I was going to submit this one, but I thought it's your show. I'll let you go over and put the info in.
I was having a hard time, so goodbye to Spreaker. I was having a hard time figuring out where to submit or whatever. I looked at it for all of maybe 15 seconds, which is the other problem. But
yeah, it's an easy process. In fact, I didn't put my when the show ended on there, and they contacted me back right away and said, "Hey, when does your show end?" And so it's out there. If you go to whenisiton, all one word, whenisiton.net, and it's kind of a cool little calendar that has all the live shows that are on. I mentioned eventually, Mike. I'll talk. This is a question for you, Mike Phillips, just to think about. When you get so many in there, it will become kind of unusable, just because there'll be so many sections in there. So, interested on your thoughts on that. If you guys have any plans as it gets larger, to that format, that calendar format you won't be able to see anything in there if you get too many. So.
What's the website again on that? When is it on?
When is it on? Yeah, whenisiton.net. It's free to use. So if you have a live podcast that you do, I submitted Home Gadget Geeks to it, and so it was super easy to use and put out there. Not a lot of shows. I mean, there's quite a few. They have quite a few of them out there right now, and so it's really readable. It works really well. At the time, my program was the only one in the Wednesday or in the Thursday time slot, so it shows up nicely.
Hey, can I brag?
Yeah.
Since we're not. I'm trying to share my screen. You guys see that?
Yeah.
That is the email from the CEO of Spreaker, saying based on our chat, we've put in a redirect feed option into Spreaker because he heard
Nicely
me.
done.
He heard me on Blog Talk Radio,
Mm-hmm.
and or he heard me on talking to the guy from Blog Talk Radio. I'm like, well, hold on, you don't like us either. What's the deal? And I'm like, well, here's first things first. I'm like, why are you changing my file names and other things like that? But yeah, I thought it was cool. He sent me that back and said, hey, based on your feedback, thanks for the tip. And because he was kind of aware of it, but not really. I don't think he got like why. Now where's my camera? I don't
There you
think he got why we thought it was important. And I'm like, well, in the event that you raise your prices or something happens or whatever, I want the ability to walk out. And he was like, oh, okay, yeah, we can do that. I'll talk to my developer.
It still doesn't. It still doesn't change the fact that their MP3 URL locations are going to be unique to them, right? So
Yeah.
if I upload it to Spreaker, I'm going to get this Spreaker URL that if I do decide to leave, I've got to go back in, and if I'm a WordPress user, I got to go back into PowerPress and change every single post that I've linked it to.
Well,
and that's not a bad thing. Again, this is I believe in using them. I think they're great. I use them as an alternative source. I think they're fantastic for that. I just would not make it my primary source of record, and they need to be okay with that. They're an ancillary player, not or if you have someone who's just starting podcasting, it might be one of those good places to just have them try it, right?
They also are coming out with a desktop version. So instead of being web-based, I'm like, that's interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Desktop, really? Okay, 1995.
So, and I know they said on Todd's show that they're starting to sniff the idea of how to get calls in. I'm like, oh, that
would be dynamite if they could figure that out and basically replace what we're doing here, because the latency is really bad with Call-in Studio.
Yeah, somebody said that I saw that in the chat where the chat, like if you're listening to Mixlr, it's nowhere near the video, so you almost need to turn Mixlr off and listen to the audio.
No, you have to. Yeah,
and then I guess the problem is when you're on Mixlr, when you then call in, you have to basically just listen on your phone and turn the audio off on the video. I was thinking about that. I need to make like a call in. If you're calling in, here's what to expect kind of cheat sheet for people.
Yeah. Well, it's interesting. We've come full circle, right? Because we're having people call in. Hello, the 80s called. And yet it's working. People are calling in, and I'm super happy with the amount of the amount of calling has gotten to be the right balance. Now we're getting 3 or 4 calls a show, which is really good. I'm prepping now more than I ever have for the show, not getting to use any of it because we're getting callers.
Yeah, calls, yeah.
Which is awesome, but
yeah, Mike, that was Francisco at Spreaker, and I'm using the 910, the Logitech. Jim, what are you using?
920.
920.
And I've had this in the notes for a while to talk about, but I've actually got my 920 on a mount. So I've got a Manfrotto camera mount that locks onto the arm of my monitor mounts. I've got a spindle, a single cylinder monitor mount, and then the monitors this way. You take that Manfrotto clamp and put it on the bottom of it, and I send it up with an 18-inch camera arm that's flexible. And so it doesn't sit on the monitors. It's completely off of it, and you can move it around, and it stays. There it goes. It stays, and you can just move it around if you want. That's been really nice for me. It's about a $45 setup for just the camera mount, but that's been a good little buy for me.
Yeah, someday I'm going to be as cool as you. I have that. I think you put it in our behind-the-scenes show notes.
I did. Yeah, I've listed it a couple times just for folks if they want to give it a shot. I got turned on to it from a friend of mine. He was like, "Hey, you ought to try this," and it's been great.
And then Tommy, behind the scenes, I got one. Someday I'm going to put the actual cover on that, but I got two lights on each one pointing at me. Because if I turn on the normal whatever fluorescent lights above me, they're not right above me. They're kind of like that.
You
above
want straight
me,
on.
Yeah, I get this weird kind of shadow thing. I got one behind me, so I have one too far in front of me and one behind me. So I just end up with this weird shadow on my face. I'm like, all right, I need something.
Addie's asking where's the link for the behind the scenes. Addie, that's why it's behind the scenes.
Yeah.
You can't see it. I'll throw a link. I'll throw those links here in the Addie. I'll throw those Manfrotto links here in the.
And it's fun just to say Manfrotto.
It is cool to say that. You know, we talked about lighting too. And guys, these are affiliate links. I apologize. So just work your way around it, or log in with Dave's affiliate link or whatever. But they're just embedded that way. So those are the two clamps that I use, and that'll get you to Amazon. The other thing I like for lighting is I had so Dave McCabe, who I podcast with for HomeServerShow.com, he bought me some Cowboy Studio lights, a lighting rig on Amazon. And they're really inexpensive, $75 or so for a 3-light setup. 2 of them I mounted on the ceiling, and they're pointing straight out at me. And one of them I take on the road with me. I bought an extra umbrella for like $8. I mean, this is not expensive stuff. And I take it on the road with me. So when I'm podcasting at a conference, I have a single light with a big umbrella. And that really lights up the set. And that's what I'm using right now. I mean, you can see, watch my video here. So this is lit. That's not lit, right? I mean, here,
do that again.
Lit, right? This is lit, not lit, right? I mean, it makes a big difference. And
now I got to get a clicker.
Yes, this is. I got this, I think, at Menards or Home Depot or something like that.
I do have a clicker for my fan, which is nice. I do like the fact that.
Yeah, well, it's nice. I set it right here. My board is right here. I just set it on the board, and if I want to turn the lights on and off, you just hit the clicker. So, it's a fun way to do it.
You have to run around and hit switches and.
Yeah, no, you want to have that. You want to have that stuff all rigged up at your desk. So, and I thought about running a switch down here, and I'm like, okay, idiot, just go buy a remote.
Yeah.
You know. And but Cowboy Studios, that's the lighting rig. If you go to Amazon, go through Dave's Amazon affiliate link and search for Cowboy Studios.
Yeah, because I've heard. I think Daniel was set up something with them, and he said the same thing. He said, look, this is not something that you want to beat the snot out of. It's not the best made stuff, but if you're just going to set it up and leave it, it works good.
Right.
Looks good.
Yeah. You don't want to travel with it because this stuff is cheap from that standpoint. But you're just looking for a stand and a good bulb and then a way to diffuse that. Separately, that umbrella that I use, they're $8.75. That's super cheap. That's $8.75, and so for the average podcaster, that kind of works. One of the things you have to remember with webcams is the sensors are so small, they're light hungry. So the more light you can throw at them, the more forward-facing light on you can throw at them, the better. The more light that reflects off you and hits the camera, the better. So overlight your studio, not underlight it. That's a mistake I made for a lot of years, and that's why Dave bought me these lights. He was like, dude, because I tried a bunch of different things, and so he just, for Christmas, when he was like, here's some lights, just use them. And I was like, all right,
nice.
I get it.
That's cool.
Yeah. So Tommy says he has a $100 Cowboy Studio umbrella set to record editions at home. Use it works great. Yeah, $75 to $100, varying on what you buy. Great equipment. Not the most stable or sturdy or roadworthy. They send you a road bag that comes in, and I'm like, oh, I'd never use that.
Yeah. Well, that, and if you have kids, be very wary, because I know mine, if I just breathe on it right, it'll tip over.
Yeah.
We adjust the way it is.
Yeah. Well, I'm in the basement and the ceiling's open, so what I did is I actually bought some clamps that you would use for pipes, those pipe clamps, the plastic ones, and I took the stands and I mounted them to the ceiling, and then I took those pipe clamps and I just put them to the joists. And so they hang down as opposed to being on the floor. So the lights are there and there's nothing underneath them, so that because I've got a lot of movement down here in the office, and
that's cool.
So that's a way of getting them up and out of the way.
I'm reading Tommy's stuff here. Yep, 4 lighting options. Awesome.
Yeah, there's lots of good. That's certainly lighting is a lighting. It does. I have two of those umbrellas down here. They put a little heat out. It gets a little warm down here if with the computer's running and I've got 3 monitors and a big 24 and big, and that's throwing off some heat. And you get down here, it gets a little warm if I don't have the fan going. I need a remote.
Yeah,
for
it's
my
right.
fan.
You need the remote for the fan, man. I'm telling you, it's awesome. And it swivels and all sorts of fun stuff. But yeah, I definitely want to get the what are those things called? The big tubes that are stuck on your desk. Because my desk is a mess. And
As far as the monitor mounts?
I would love to get my monitor off,
off
the desk and up. And then it would look shorter because then the camera would be up.
Let me look those up real quick and just see
aerial
what
view of Dave.
Yeah, and you can get them in 2 and 4. Actually, if you go out to theaverageguy.tv/gear, all this stuff is listed on my gear page. Again, warning: affiliate links are near. But I'm trying to think if I've got gear added. So you want to look at the second post: gear added to the AverageGuy.tv studio, lights, camera, action. So the lighting rig is out there, and then I show and have a link to the monitor mounts. If you go to the averageguy.tv/monitor mount, you can. And I got that for less than $50. Actually, that was a Christmas present too. My family bought that for me for Christmas. So
Santa was really good to you this year.
That year was good. Yes, that was a good Christmas. Everybody bought me podcasting, and for the birthday before that, my kids pitched in and bought me a Drobo, which was really cool. So. I'm like, oh, my kids get me. They get me.
Isn't that cool? So much better than a tie.
Yeah, or cologne.
Oh man! And then you unbottle it like years later, and it's like, oh, it smells like bad vinegar because it's been sitting on your.
Oh, and I just don't use it. Yeah, I could probably smell better. If you're in chat, that's there's the link if you want to come out and take a look at the pictures that Michael was asking for studio. My camera is mounted, so I can't just grab it and like you do because it's physically mounted on this clamp. I could move it around a little bit, but
I have a Google. How much of a Google Plus person are you?
Enough. I'm out there.
I mean, because I have my Dave Jackson profile, and then I have a School of Podcasting page, and somewhere I've messed up the settings so that when I'm on, in one of the podcasting communities, and I click on it and I go to reply, it's replying as the School of Podcasting.
Yeah, there's a little setting in the upper left, upper left, and it says posting as, and you can drop that down.
Well, what stinks is when I change to me, then it takes me away from the post that I wanted to, and I'm like, there's somewhere that it's like in a setting. It's like if it's because in this case it's going to my Gmail account, that Gmail account is associated with the page. Which it is, but it's also associated with my profile, and I'm like, it didn't used to do that, and I must have messed up something somewhere. And I'm like, it's annoying. So what I have to do is, I see the post, I then have to switch to me, go into the communities, and then I'll see the post that I was emailed about. So which again isn't, it's not rocket science, but I can. It's just like this used to be one-click type of reply, and now I'm like, I gotta jump through a bunch of hoops, and I don't know.
Yeah, it's a tough social network to. I find engagement. I see traffic is high, engagement is low. It depends what you're talking about. There are some threads where the engagement's very, very high in a variety of areas, but it's tough. It's for me. It's really right now from an engagement standpoint. Twitter for me has become number one, partially because I put so much time into it this summer, and then 2, Facebook, and then 3 would be Google Plus, maybe 4 would be LinkedIn. I don't find podcasting stuff on LinkedIn. I find LinkedIn to be very busy and nobody's talking to each other. They're all, hey, I got a new job. Hey, I've been here 7 years. Hey, it's all about me, business, blah, blah, blah. I have new skills. But the conversations are awful. I mean, they're just like, Yeah,
there used to be some really good groups over there, and I think they've all just migrated to Google Plus. I mean, Mike he moderates the Podcasting Technology Resources Group, and that's one of my faves.
Yeah, there's 2 of them, right? There's 2 probably main ones, Podcasters, and I think it's Podcasters, and the one, Mike, the Resources Group, and a lot of good information coming out of those. But the one on Facebook's not bad. The Facebook Podcasters Group does pretty well.
Did you see Todd's rant this week?
On Facebook?
Yeah, Todd. I started to talk about that. Todd has had it with podcast consultants.
Oh, yeah. Well, sorry. There's an ecosystem there, and it's a market that needs to be served, And the problem is it's the latest thing. I mean, you've been doing this a long time.
Yeah.
It's the latest thing, and there's a lot of folks coming out seeing money opportunities because this is actually a good thing for podcasters that this is happening in some ways, because that means there's more podcasters out there than there's ever been, which is good, right? We'll have a recycling process that goes in. We're gonna have a lot of people quit over the next year who started and will stop, but rising tides float all boats. So as more people get involved, they'll reach a wider audience. When they quit, that audience will look for something new. They'll find you. So
I forget the name of the group in Facebook. It's because Mike is like, oh, he wants to hear about. Basically, Todd was saying there's so many resources for free to learn how to podcast that he said if he hears about another mastermind community, he was going to puke, I believe was the exact quote. And it's just called Podcast Community. It's on Facebook. I don't know that I can send a link. It looks like I can. Let me copy this link. I'll throw it in.
Although, let me say, podcast consulting is a lot like counseling. You're paying for a friend. It's one of those. Sure, you can go out and find all kinds of free stuff. It's always been that way. But sometimes you want someone who will be dedicated to you, right? You don't have enough time to go searching for all that or know what's right or know what works and what doesn't work. You just want one person to blame. So you hire that person and say, all right, teach me what to do so I can get up to speed faster. And so I agree with Todd in some ways that and I didn't read the article, so I'm doing it secondhand from you.
It used to be at the top because it had literally 150 comments on it of people liking it. And
there are a lot, but there is a lot of free, but there's a lot of free tutorials out there on how to build a deck or how to fix your car or how to paint your house. But I don't do it myself. Actually that's not true. I do, but the point being is that I don't fix my car. I could go to a YouTube video and it would tell me how to do it, but that doesn't mean for free. It doesn't mean I'm a mechanic.
He's got a reply to this. It says, it's obvious that my comments yesterday showed two distinct sides to podcasting. And even I did not realize there was that big of a divide. I appreciate the 100 or so private emails from folks on both sides of the fence that did not want to leave a comment publicly, along with all the public commentary. I'll make sure I cover all points of view in my next article. That was his whole thing. He says, I'm writing an article for the next Poddertainment magazine. That being said, I don't want to discount the hard work consultants bring to the table, as each has their own strengths. The main point of focus, though, will be providing additional reference resources for new podcasters to use that are free. Basically was his point, that hey, you don't need a podcast consultant, I think is what he was going for.
No, you don't need one.
Which is true. If I always tell people, do you have time or money?
Yeah.
And I said, in reality, my point was, I said, look, you can buy The Wizard of Oz on DVD and Blu-ray. Why? Because you can pretty much catch that movie just about once a week on TBS, and you do it for convenience and your own schedule and things like that. And I said, so yeah, you're right. You don't need one, but on the other hand, somebody right now is paying me a decent amount of money because she'd hired two quote experts on Odesk to fix her feed, and neither one did. And it took me like 10 minutes to go, oh, well, here's the problem. And so she paid me a decent hourly wage for 10 minutes. And she's like, wow, that was less than I paid those two people. And I'm like, well, there's something to be said for experience.
Yeah, well, Mike Phillips makes a great point, and this is probably one we should think about a lot, is that he says that the argument's not against being paid to get help, right? And that's kind of what I was saying is hey, you need people out there to do the work for you, but about being paid to get rich. And I think that that really bothers some people when it's like this and hey, by the way, I mean, podcasting is the first time that this pitch has been done, do this and get rich, right? There's been tons of, there have been many brothers and sisters of this problem before. That just really grinds against some people. I mean, they just really don't like it. And I don't think there's anything wrong with it, because if you do hustle it, you can like Michael, I think, said early on, hey, I'm not against making money, right? Some people have a fundamental problem with people who say, do it my way and you will get rich. Well, you know what? Some will. Some do, right? You can hustle this gig and make some money. People have. So it's just I think that honestly is a personal preference thing. So there's people who have an opinion for it and those who don't.
And I see they deleted the original feed or the original post. I was like, oh, I wanted to go over and copy that. What are you going to
do? Ken Blanchard says, I'm working on my second million. I gave up trying on the first.
That's it.
Awesome. That's awesome. That's a great quote. Yeah. Yeah. Well, what's interesting to me is being on the outside fringe of this, not having a dog in the hunt, to use Mike Phillips' terms. I don't either. I'm not in this. I make a little bit of money doing this, and I don't promise anybody anything. And I do it for work, and I really enjoy what I do in doing it. I have not been as sensitive to this podcast and get rich, whatever that is out there. I'm hearing a lot of negativity around that, but I'm not seeing or maybe because I'm just not listening to those people. But I listen to you. I don't get that necessarily from your show. But apparently out there is a thread of, and maybe because I didn't go to the conference, I didn't see this, but apparently there's an offensive thread of people saying, do this and get rich, and that's bothering some people. I don't hear it. The
one thing that Chris Brogan said that I thought, oh man, that's going to stir a lot of pot, is he said, if you don't have a business plan, don't podcast.
Well, yeah, it's for anything, right?
Yeah, and he was like, and I know what he was saying, but there are a lot of people that just do it for the passion and because they want to connect.
Well, you have to have a business. If you want to make money, you got to have a business plan, right? You got to have a plan.
Yeah.
To do it, you got to have a plan. That makes sense. If you're going to do it out of passion, you don't have to have a plan. Just do it.
No. Yeah.
Right? So.
And that was the whole thing, but he said it as such an absolute that I was like, oh, that's going to rub a lot of people.
No. Yeah. No, I don't think you do for that kind of deal, But if you're going to make some, and some people are going to do it and they're going to fall into money, and some are going to work really hard and not make a dime. That's going to happen. There's some luck involved,
Absolutely.
Why did John Lee Dumas make it? And there's probably 15 others that did the exact same thing or something similar that won't, right? And
his big thing was it was daily and it was new.
Yeah, but I'm sure he wasn't the first or the only one trying that model. It's just he's the one that got popular, and so the history's always written by the victors, right? And so since he was the most popular and was doing it, we see it through the light of his success. What we don't see are the 15 other failures of people who tried to do something like that, or an original idea. I mean, come on, Dave. You've had an idea that's been original in the past, and you're like, oh, nobody's doing this, I'm going to do it. And you try it, and it's just a horrible failure, right? And you're like, hey, originality is not always successful. So, just having a new idea doesn't mean it's going to be successful.
That is true. There are people that will fling poo on an easel and then call it art. Like,
and sometimes that works. Yeah, you know the right people, you have the right influence. I mean, there's another element of this is who do you know? And so as you start promoting your podcast, if you've got a diverse network and you can start pushing this out and some of those key influencers start pushing it out, you can start seeing some real numbers in a hurry. And but if you don't, guess what? You're going to have to work it.
Well, the one thing I just started, I'm on what would be page 3. Pooh fingers, nice. I just started reading Jared Easley's book, and I can't even remember what the name of it is at this point. Something about growing your audience. And the one thing that I hear over and over, and I want to interview him because he seems like a really nice guy at the conference, is that Jared knows everybody. He's like a networking machine. And I'm trying to find the name of the book. But the first part of it was cool, like the first couple pages. I'm like, oh, cool. Because he talks about how I'm not an author, but I'm writing a book. I never thought I'd be a podcaster, but I have a podcast, and it's making headways up the thing, and it's like kind of goes back to that fear thing, and apparently I have no idea how to spell it easily.
Ken Blanchard says, you know who's really smart? That Art of Charm guy. Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
That's a good gig. Are you kidding me? Yeah. Well, and he's got charm himself. I mean, he's just selling what and you know what? He well, anyways, I don't want to go there. That's a super sensitive topic, especially to guys, because it's like, he's like, hey, just do what I tell you to do, and you'll, do this stuff. Ooh, well. okay, maybe. And he's got some people he's done it for that have where it's worked. And
yeah, Jared's book is How to Grow Your Audience Through Collaboration.
Mm-hmm.
So.
Hey, listen, I've been in this space, Dave. I've done a lot of the stuff that we all talk about, right? So it has not turned my podcast from 1,000 downloads to 10,000 downloads overnight, right? I mean, I've worked Twitter like a madman. I have been all over Facebook. I've been on other people's programs. I've had people on my programs. I've done all these things. I've started a mailing list. I've done all the things we say. I'm still at 1,000, and that number hasn't moved in a year or two, maybe.
I'm going to start an Excel spreadsheet where when I upload my show, I'm going to look at the stats of the last 4 episodes and put those in a spreadsheet so I can then see. I'm trying to see growth or not. And I'd go in and say, show me a month's worth of stats, which is kind of the same, but that is always going to go up because there's more episodes. It's like that number should go up. So, but on the other hand, I want to go, okay, how much time is it going to take? Because that's real close to obsessing over my stats.
I was going to say, are you spending a little too much time on your stats, Dave?
Yeah, but it is kind of weird when you're trying to see are things going up or down. But a lot of time, on occasion, I will step into my Stitcher stats to see how long people are listening, and that's always depressing. Makes you want to do a 3-minute show.
Yeah. That's where it just gets a little too crazy with it, and why I don't try to spend too much time on it, because it's like, well, I'm in this for fun, and I'm really in it for the engagement, and so I would much rather, for me, here's my success over the last, how long have we been doing this? When did we start doing this? Officially. Was it spring?
Yeah. Something
no,
like that.
It was last winter, because I was doing it during an intern class, so. Had to be late last fall. Let's just say we've been doing this for a year. Okay. So because of this, I got to know Ryan Parker, right? And that is, for me, I dig Ryan Parker. He's a great guy. I love hanging out with him. I love talking to him. And so, not to mention, I wouldn't have known Mike Phillips if we went. I wouldn't have gotten to know Addie in this process, because my show's a tech show. We don't get girls. It's only guys. This is the first show I've done where we've had women show up, and so that's a little odd for me. But it's these relationships, these quality content related life. I came up with the slogan this week that I've been testing around, is tech in the context of life. In this, that we're not, because there's a million tech shows, right? There's The Verge and Engadget, and I mean, everybody's got a tech show, but our tech show is different because it's in the context of life. And so even the way we podcast, right? It's kind of like podcasting in the context of life. And so for me, the measure of engagement isn't that my stats jumped. Oh, I started podcasting with the Dave Jackson, and now I should see my numbers double. Well, okay, they didn't. They're better.
I could have told you that.
They're better. They are better, right? I mean, I have seen an uptick in some. But that being said, I want to podcast with you because it brings me a great amount of personal satisfaction. I mean, because I enjoy doing this, personal satisfaction and joy to what we're doing here. So. If I was working, I've said this before, if I was working this for money, it would be a totally different gig, right? I would have to approach it in a completely different way.
Yeah, I'm with you on that.
Yeah, no, I just love it. So,
well, to me, man, it's like, Ken Blanchard, Ryan Parker, Mike Phillips, and Mike said it. He goes, I talk to people online more than I do. I really, in theory, in Ohio, outside of family, I have one official friend, and I've known that guy since 6th grade. But everybody else is internet-based.
Yeah. Isn't that funny? Isn't that fun? I mean, one of my best friends, Mike Howard, and we talk two or three times a week. Jump on and share podcasting stuff, or talk about. Mike was just on my podcast on Thursday. Well, that'll air in a couple weeks. And he was talking about how his oldest son just went to college, and so we talk about all the tech decisions that had to be made to get a kid in college, right?
Oh, man.
Walk through it. He had a picture. He's a photographer, so he had a picture. We had a slideshow of the dorm room and some of those kinds of things, and it was really cool. And that's when I came up with that slogan, tech in the context of life. It was kind of like I had an epiphany at that moment. It's like, yeah, that's what we do. We talk about tech as we use it, as we really use it, not just, oh, iOS 6 has a new update now. You should, it has a podcast app. I mean, all that stuff is great, but I would rather talk about it and like what are people really using. We're gonna have a quadcopter episode here in a couple weeks where a couple guys have bought these quad and hexacopters, and both of them have crashed them in the process and broken them. And so they're gonna kind of bring their experience to the show and talk about that. So it's that's what I like. That's the stuff I like. I like making these connections.
I'm with you on that.
Yeah. No, it's just a lot of fun. Donald Trump. And nothing happened. Yeah. It's funny. I had an experience this week. Sometimes we build up these big guys so big that when we actually meet them for douche, they really are, and we kind of go, oh, that's kind of douche.
Record that, man. Go over to schoolofpodcasting.com/contact and click the old SpeakPipe button, and that's a cool because of my podcast story. It's a bummer that nothing happened, but it's cool to say I shared the stage with Donald Trump. Most people want to go did you punch him or grab his hair or anything fun like that, but
I got to meet Callie Lewis because of my podcast, and she came to Omaha. I had a relationship with Drobo at the time, and she came to Omaha. We did a kind of a joint meetup, and so I got to meet her and her crew, and it was really cool. She is the real deal, man. She's
exactly what she is. Yeah, I've met her a couple times. Yeah. Back when there was a pod show at the second New Media Expo, there was like a pod show room, and they were kind of mad because we had our own little like conference going on. So I got to hang out with her and a bunch of the early podcasts, and she is exactly what you see is what you get.
Yeah, she's fantastic.
Yeah,
and that's what I would hope I would be as a podcaster, that I'm genuine and that if you meet me in person, I'm the same person that you see on the microphone.
Ken says Donald Trump has gold hair. Well, if you got that much money, why not?
It could be gold strands that he's just had woven in to the comb over.
Well, I know Callie is now rocking it on the Patreon platform. The last time I checked.
Oh, is she? Yeah. She's got some good stuff. I'll admit, I have not listened to a lot of her stuff recently, just because I'm not her target. Oh, maybe
I pop in and out of that one. There are a couple of shows that I pop in and out of, and that's one that I pop in and I'm like, yep, she's still cute and perky and has cool stuff. And
talking tech, and she's actually, for the tech stuff that we do on our show, she would be a great like precursor to it, because she does these high level, hey, this is coming out, they released this, have you looked at that? Then we like to take those cool things and dive into them, go deep and have somebody try them or those. We interviewed the CEO, Tom Ryden, I think is his name, of the robot, of the telepresence robot that they make. It made its appearance in Iron Man 2 and some other things, and it was really cool. And one of our hosts was using this telepresence robot at NASA as an intern, and he was dialing in and using the robot and going to meetings and stuff, and it was really cool. And it wasn't just like, well, here's what we think. I mean, how often do you really get a chance to review a telepresence robot, right? Kind of deal. Right. And so that's just not something you're going to find on The Verge or some of those things, because they're going to give it like 7 seconds of, they're going to read the description, they're going to get a couple, and then they're going to talk about it, and in 3 minutes it's gone,
Yeah.
As opposed to, hey, let's really let's dig in a little bit, let's talk about it.
Awesome. Well, I should probably run because I've got to go type up a bunch of stuff. We didn't even mention National Podcast Day.
Oh, we didn't get to that. Darn it. Well, we started. Did we start? We talked about it in the pre-show, didn't we?
Yeah, I don't think we.
Well, we can talk about it next week. I'll just leave it in the show notes. By next week, they'll have more information about it.
Yeah, the site will actually be kind of officially up and going, and so I'm working on some material for that, and so I've got to write that up and then do my podcasting stuff. Which means Dave's going to be podcasting on Sunday. Actually, what that means, Dave's going to be podcasting on. No, I can't do it on Monday. Monday's when things go up. I'm like, we have a holiday. And I'm like, oh wait, no, that's supposed to be out by then. So
yeah,
we'll figure that out. So, but
all right, man. Good chatting with you.
Yeah, Mike, I will send you an email with my phone number. We'll just chat that way.
Yeah, it'd be good. Get some of his advice on that. And that Mackie mixer should be good. I think maybe you just got a bum mixer or something. The Mackie makes really good stuff. So
yeah, it's like I said,
for the
it's
average
just,
guy.
And as I play with other channels, because I have one channel that just kind of just is on the fritz.
Mm-hmm.
So I moved over to another one, and it's cool, but it's one of those where as soon as I touch a knob, it's like, and I'm like, all right,
Yeah.
this is just.
Yeah.
And I'm like, do I pay to get it clean? Do I take it out and pull it apart? I'm like, you know what?
For that price.
Yeah, it's like,
Yeah.
It's good, get something.
Trade it in.
Yeah.
If they give you $25, you're in good shape.
That's what I should do, is
Yeah.
trade it in.
Take it to Guitar Center, trade it in, get some credit.
Yeah, that's a good idea, man.
So, yeah.
All
All right, man. Have a
Thanks,
good
Rick.
weekend. See you, Dave.
Yep.
Take care.
See ya.